Yeah, that sounds very fulfilling too. I guess take us back to then like your undergraduate research experience and your thesis as well. What percentage maybe, or maybe like a breakdown of time you spent reading historic texts versus utilizing analytical tools?
Yeah, so I mentioned the important aspect of tying this into culture, and I think you always want to answer a cultural question. So if you're approaching an archaeological problem with your material science toolkit alone, that's not good enough. So it always has to be a mix of material science and learning about the culture you're working with and getting into the text that might be relevant to that material that you're investigating. So in my case, that first year, that October of my freshman year that I started, I spent a good 4 or 5 months, oh no, maybe even more. So through the spring, fall and spring, just in the library, just reading. And I was reading mostly archaeological literature, 16th century Spanish literature. I took 3 years of high school and Spanish in high school. My Spanish was not at all good at the time, but good enough to sort of fake it through text and get the gist of things. And then I spent January at MIT is called IAP, Independent Activities Period. It's sort of meant to be a fun time where you do non-traditional things that aren't necessarily academic. I spent that whole month reading this Spanish text called the Florentine Codex that a Spanish priest wrote about the Aztec, and he lived with the Aztec and spent time learning Nahuatl, their language, and started chronicling everything that it meant to be Aztec. Foods, crops, trade, gods, family dynamics, everything. So I read those, there's 12 volumes. I read it cover to cover that January and was taking notes on everything related to rubber and latex that he mentioned. And it was a lot. And that sort of got things moving where I could take his information and then go into other archaeological texts and start putting pieces together. So by the end of that spring, I had kind of figured out what the recipe was for making rubber. It was latex from a tree and juice from a certain morning glory vine. And I also figured out where those species were, what parts of the world they were native to. So with Professor Hostler, we planned a trip to Chiapas, which is the southernmost state in Mexico on the Guatemala border, knowing that those materials should be there. And there was also a friend of Professor Hostler's named Jan Gasco, who was a traditional archaeology professor, was doing a dig in Chiapas. So I met Jan there, worked on her dig, and sort of on the side, we were searching for latex and morning glory sources, and we found them. And so that was sort of my first fieldwork. I got some archaeological fieldwork experience. I got my latex and morning glory source discovered. And when I went to this farm, there was a family, the Guillen family, that lived on this ranch that had a bunch of latex trees and also had morning glory. And I told them, hey, I've been working on this project, trying to figure out how rubber balls were made 1,000 years ago. Through the library work, I found this morning glory latex combination. And they said, oh yeah, when we were kids, we used to go out into the field and we'd do that process. Do you want to see it? And it was perfect. So they walked me through the way they did it. I brought a bunch of materials back to MIT and started working on it in the lab. And at that point on, probably sophomore, sophomore and junior year was mostly analytical lab work. And then senior year was kind of mostly writing. So I would say it was a good third of library work in the whole first year. And that library work never goes away, even in, battery research or alloy development or whatever it is you're doing. You're always digging in the literature and finding new things, and new papers come out that change your thought process. But I would say, yeah, it's 30, 40% library, maybe 60% lab work.
Wow. Yeah, it's just maybe a different type of text or different type of literature that you're looking into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any difference in the approach. It's just different sources, and a little bit of a different mindset, because it's not just technical. And a lot of it's not peer reviewed, right? It's someone sending letters back to Spain, and there's someone in the court transcribing letters, and you've got different levels of hearsay going on, and people making things up, and certain sources being more reliable than others. So it is a bit different in that way. You have to take some of these sources with a grain of salt. I mean, I suppose that's true in engineering too, but at least there's been some process to verify conclusions and results and analysis and that sort of thing.
Thank you for watching this segment of the It's a Material World podcast. For the full episode, hit the link in the description. We'll see you soon, and in the meantime, go change the world.